Next is Gina Castanon with minutes donated by Ruben there he is.
On which number?
Oh, sorry, 1.3?
Oh, same, okay.
Good evening, council, staff, and members of the audience. My issue with 1.3 is the width, the 8-foot for the horse trail. When we adopted the general map plan from Riverside County, there was already the approved trail map integrated into that plan. And at the last Trails Committee that I attended, because of this issue came up again across the street of McVicker, where it went from 10 feet to 7.5, we spoke against that and citing safety issues. Tim Walker and Bob Cashman were on the City Trails Committee when we made those recommendations to modify it to make it safe and to avoid any unnecessary litigation by not doing, not setting the standards to what the guidelines say. And then I had Gary Brown attend that meeting that day, so he would verify. If all of you don't know, Gary Brown, longtime resident, was on Sheriff Posse for many, many years. His grand poobah of the Elks Lodge came to confirm what Gary had presented, that you need the 10 feet width for the horses to, be able to ride safely. But at the time, your comment, Tim, was I think inappropriate, because your response to our, complaint, or at least making you guys aware of the problem, was that you would rather see the trails closed down, and avoid litigation, if that's going to be, if it's going to be a liability issue. That's disappointing, because a lot of us have worked on that trails map that was approved by Riverside County back in the day before we became a city. And I am for the trail. It's beautiful. I've been on the Trails Committee more years than I had really wanted to be. But the deficit of the width of the trail is a concern to me, and I wanted it on record. I know that there was adjustments to the plan, and I think that's what decreased the standard 10 feet to the 8, and I would like that looked at, because we're not closing any of the trails down. But it was resolved on McVicker Street, and they did put it back, staff did put it back to the recommended 10-foot width. So I don't see why we can't do that here as well. It's a grant funding that we're using to install the trails, and before you have final approval and proceed with it, I'd like you guys to address the minimum requirement for equestrian trails. Thank you.
Dan, do you want to say anything about the trail? I know there was an issue with I think it was fencing or something with the residents or something to that effect.
Yeah, so sheet 4 of the plan set is actually included in your package. We're installing 3.5 miles of trail. We're touching every property along that way. We have right-of-way constraints in areas. We've got some private property improvements that are having to be worked around or improved upon. But if you will look at the improvement plans, the majority of the trail, there are many, and most of the sections are 10 feet wide. There are some sections that are 8 where we're limited and constrained, and there are a few areas that are even less than that where we'll have to put up And we've identified additional signage so that if two horsebacks are on riders, they'll be able to see each other and they'll know that to not pass at the same time. The federal minimum requirement is actually 8 feet is a recommended guideline on that. We understand the 10-foot guideline. We try to incorporate the 10-foot guideline in every instance that we can. And if you look at that sheet 4, you'll see that many of the sections are actually at 10 feet wide.
Okay. And going to my comment, it was, I think it was in the McVicker place, there was something to do with a substation or something was in the way of the movement of that place. And I know that we moved it, it had to be shrunk down. And I said if people can't work with that, then I guess we can close that section of that trail and make it not accessible to go on a horse that way. They have to go a different direction. That was my comment. That's why I said it that way. So people will understand that. If you can't move something that's already in the ground, I mean, I don't know what else to say. I mean, we did as best we can, and I guess it's 7.5 feet. I rode my horse all over this valley, and I can be on a 3-foot wide trail and be fine. Yeah, I can't have somebody right next to me on the same trail, that's fine. But in those instances, I guess if you ride horses, and I used to ride horses all the time, that would be an issue. So with that, thank you for your explanation, because I knew that's what the explanation was, but everybody else needed to know it too.